The problem with the stigma around mental health is really about the stories that we tell ourselves as a society. What is normal? That's just a story we tell ourselves. Matthew Quick. Welcome to the Applied Awareness Podcast, where you join me, Adam French, on my journey of expanding my awareness of self and the world around me. Then find creative ways to apply that awareness to live a more successful and fulfilling life. This episode 4, Mental Health in Society, is the first part in my Managing Mental Health series, where I talk to a couple of really insightful, intelligent guests about their struggles with mental health and how we can all do our part to create a society where mental health is socially supported. In this first episode, Mental Health in Society, I'm going to be talking to my good friend Colton Lish. He's done a lot of research on mental health. He's a really strong logician and philosopher. He's a very insightful person, and I think he'll have a lot to say about this issue. So with Colton, we're going to be talking about some kind of general mental health statistics in America. We break down the statistic that 44 million people struggle with some form of mental illness, and we talk about the relationship between mental health and gun violence. We also talk about some societal factors that are causing these statistics, how school, education, and just our attitudes as a culture contributes to these mental health trends. We also talk about Ted Cruz. A lot of lighthearted humor in this episode. Me and Colton go way back. He was my roommate last year. So there's going to be a good balance of insightful ponderings on, what is the role of everyone in this society to make our society a better one for people with mental illnesses, and lighthearted talk on, why Ted Cruz is a paragon of clever but very socially unaware, and how that is kind of perpetuated in our society. I highly recommend you and anyone else who's curious about their role in making the world a better place for people with mental health issues. I recommend that you check that out and share with your friends. All right, let's get started.
Radio to Colton Lish. How's the sound over on your side?
Sound over on my side should be pretty good, as long as my vocal cords are vibrating at the right frequencies.
Oh, frequencies. All right, I'm here at the beautiful Greek Leadership Village in Arizona State University with my friend, ex-roommate, expert armchair philosopher, advanced logician. I said that right, logician?
Yeah.
Logician.
Yeah, for sure.
And proponent of systematic justice. How about that? Yeah? What'd you say?
Okay, yeah. Let's include Quidditch God, too.
Quidditch God, yes.
Yeah.
I forgot the last. Okay, yeah. And Quidditch God. So, all of that wrapped in one man, and you have Colton Lish. How you doing, Colton?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm good. It's a beautiful morning. Got some tasty French pressed coffee.
Oh, man. French press coffee. Who makes that anymore?
You do, because that's what expert armchair philosophers do, right? So, what are you working on currently in terms of your studies, your research? I know you've been researching topics that you're interested in. What's that looking like right now?
So right now, my academic focus is on stare decisis. It's the use of precedent in the Supreme Court. So I'm looking at constitutional law a lot, but also at a personal lens. I'm learning more about Buddhism as I prepare to take a new step in my life and try that kind of thing out.
Constitutional law and Buddhism.
Yeah.
That's an interesting intersection. I read this book, and it talked about how innovation really and transformative ideas lie at the intersection of random fields of study. So maybe you're gonna translate this into the field of mindful and Buddhist law studies.
Well, maybe. I'm hoping. I mean, one thing that our world is starting to progress towards is a more integrated society. So being someone with my kind of moral, political, religious values in a Western world like this is extremely beneficial, especially when, I still do buy into the system.
You still buy into the system even though you may know the flaws that are inherent within the system we live in. In terms of the system, by the system, I believe you're saying this, like, capitalist...
I'm more talking about our Constitution.
Constitution. Okay, so
Yeah.
legal system.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Because that sets the precedent for our economy. If we can use this system of individual rights to maximize on our collective health, be it a system of not even multiculturalism but interculturalism.
See, yeah, that's a powerful idea, and that's something I've thought a lot about, because all these people are over here screaming about immigration, and one side is saying, oh, they're not learning English, they're not making an effort to be a part of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side is saying, oh, we're not accepting them enough. We're not accepting them into our culture, we're not learning about their culture and respecting what they have to bring to the table. And it's stupid, because these people think they're shouting at each other, but if you just put those shouts in the same direction, then you have a great start for immigration policy, which is acceptance of what someone brings to the table, right? While their acceptance of your culture, and like, oh, this country is taking me in as an immigrant, and they're allowing me to set up my life here. Like, if I'm moving to Amsterdam, like, I want to learn about the history of Amsterdam. I want to learn about the languages that were spoken there. And I think it's this polarization kind of blocks us from having that natural curiosity that allows both sides to flourish.
I completely agree. And we also have to be careful about how we use that term culture as kind of an exclusive thing. Because when people come to certain countries, at the root of it, people come to countries for the social contract that governs that country. So immigrants are coming to America because of the rights that the Constitution guarantees for us and the opportunity that's available in our economic system due to the Constitution. Whether I think that our economic opportunity is the best out there, that's one thing. But immigrants definitely see that. That is a value that is perpetuated through the Constitution, our social contract.
Yeah, we market ourselves as these kind of like, oh, you have all the opportunity in the world. And I think a lot of people have experienced that firsthand in terms of wealth, movement of wealth, right? So it's kind of a huge tangent when we're supposed to be talking about mental health, but that's okay because I'm having fun. Okay, after that nice walk in the park of ideas from many different areas, let's zoom in to what's going on with mental health in America, because this is what it's about. I want to make this episode about spreading awareness of systematic mental health issues and trends that have been happening over the last few years. So I found a cool website. Anyone who's into mental health statistics and wants to learn more about the state of mental health in America, go to mentalhealthamerica.net. I'll put it in the show notes. It's a really great resource for all the statistics you want to find and a breakdown of what's happening in each demographic. So in my research, first big stat that came out to me is 1/5 of adult Americans are struggling with some sort of mental health condition. So that comes out to 44 million people, and roughly 10 million of those people aren't getting adequate care. And these are people being recorded. We're always missing people who are sometimes depressed and not other times depressed, so they don't consider themselves depressed. We are missing people who are probably depressed but don't know enough about it to say that they are, or have a mental health issue.
I mean, just looking anecdotally, like if we look in our own lives and imagine the lives of our friends, like how many people do you think are, feeling that way without saying it to themselves? Adam and I in our time together, we've definitely dealt with, at least one friend, probably two or three, honestly.
Yeah, and another 2 or 3 that we individually have that the other person doesn't know about.
Yeah, exactly. But they've all been people who have been exhibiting the same, you know, not necessarily the same symptoms, because for a lot of mental health issues, symptoms are very, very individual and individually qualified.
It's a very nuanced field, and our reductionist science tries to put it into categories. Oh, this is level 5 bipolar depression syndrome. You know, they try to categorize everything, and they do a decent job of it. The DSM-5 is huge.
Yeah, it's like it's the dictionary of mental health disorders.
Yes, that's a great piece of literature, and it fails a reliance on that, an over-reliance where we have gotten to, I believe, in our scientific interaction with society, I guess. We have began an over-reliance on categories and quantitative data, I believe.
For sure,
and this misses the nuance in problems such as mental health, where each of our brains develop in infinitely unique ways across populations, cultures, and you can't capture the change in wiring with a category, you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that's categorized misses people that, I don't want to say, yeah, they fall between the cracks. Okay, some more stats. It costs America $193.2 billion in lost earnings per year.
What?
Yeah. So the last kind of stat that really stood out to me, mental health compared to gun violence in terms of a detriment to this society. The stats on this are pretty crazy, the ones I saw. So suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the US and the 3rd leading cause of people aged 10 to 14, and the 2nd leading cause of death for people aged 15 to 24. So gun violence isn't even on that in that conversation in terms of top 10. It's not
For teen deaths.
For teen deaths. It's not even, it's like I didn't see any mention of it in the top 10. And this is from 538 and Medical News Today, well-known medical publication, as well as 538, which everyone knows about. 1 million people tried to commit suicide, so they attempted and failed and told someone about it, which not everyone's going to tell someone about it. Mm-hmm. I know people who have tried to and didn't tell anyone about it for a very long time. So 1 million people in a year, and that is compared to 33,000. 1 million compared to 33,000 who were killed by guns. So 1 million people tried to commit suicide, probably hundreds of thousands more actually did. It's the 10th leading cause of death. And
Wait, how did you make that connection? Like hundreds of thousands more probably did. Oh, just the attempted.
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
like a lot more. I mean, let's just take the 1 million. Let's not put any conjecture on that. Let's just take the 1 million. Compare that to 33,000 deaths
By gun violence.
by gun violence. And two-thirds, the vast majority of those gun deaths were, guess what? Suicide.
Suicides, yeah.
So when people say that this is a gun issue, not a mental health issue, I think you need to look to stats like that and really reconsider what the root problem is here. And I'm not saying that easy access to guns, basically what this means is we need heavy psychological screening for anyone who wants to buy a gun. That's what that stat tells me, right? So that's my position. It's based on kind of what that is. I'm not gonna like say I'm closed-minded on it, or like if you think that's wrong, like please reach out to me. Like I'm willing to have a conversation. I want to hear your opinion if it's different than mine.
Well, to
What do you
capitalize
think?
on that, I mean, I think that, you know, the mental health screening for buying a gun is more important because of those suicides. Really, if we look at it, like a lot of people who want to get a gun for self-defense, which is the majority of Americans.
Yes.
The severe majority of Americans, which is a great thing.
It's driven by fear, though, which is an interesting part of it.
However, I have many loved ones who have guns for self-defense, like a sensible handgun with a small ammunition capacity that will literally keep them like safe in situations of danger, but won't enable them to, go crazy or anything.
Yeah.
Anyways, a lot of people who get guns, the argument's made that they don't have, that drive to go out and do something to someone else. And that's something that I truly understand. I have a lot of people that I know who have mental illness, and I still know that even if they are mentally ill, they don't have a violent bone in their body. So it's not like they're gonna like go out and kill someone. Even if this mental health screening, we don't just have to look for psychosis. We have to look for the deeper things, because it's not necessarily what they'll do to someone else, but it's what they'll do to themselves. That 33,000 per year killed by gun violence, most of those being suicides.
22,000, something like that.
22,000 being suicides. That number is too large. Why? Because guns are too quick and too sure of a way to commit suicide.
Yeah, I think this is a good point, and it brings in that concept of the extra moment to think, right? How do you break bad habits? If you're like, I don't want to eat as many cookies, I'm going to put them in a hard to reach place, so I have to go that extra step of reaching for them, and I'm like, wait, do I really want another cookie? I just had two. You know what I'm saying? If you have no guns, they can't make that split-second decision to pull that trigger. It's one movement. Boom. You flex your index finger. That's it. That's all you have to do. You have to grab it, put it to your head, and flex your index finger. That's the easiest, like, nothing stopping you, right? If you have to tie the rope, get up there, like, with the fucking stool and everything, that's like, what, 10 minutes of setup? Like, you really have to think about what you're doing. And so a lot of people end up not doing it.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, how many stories do we hear of people, attempting with a firearm and the firearm jamming, or the magazine wasn't inserted properly, or whatever have you? But how many stories do we have of people pulling the trigger, the firearm not working like it's supposed to, and they are so thankful. For how many times that happens, I'd be willing to gamble that's most of the time. I mean, there was a news story recently of a young woman who attempted suicide with a firearm, and she didn't hit her brain, so she recently had a facial transplant. Journalists have asked her, do you regret what you did? Do you wish it had worked? And to this day, she's like, no. I'm very happy that I survived. She's sad that it happened, of course. Like, everyone's sad that happened. It's tragic. However, she's happy that she survived, and therefore, like.
So this is like a very constant thing, right? Like, when people try, they fail, they have this like moment, right? And what do you think happens in that moment?
In some way, they're having a moral epiphany. That's where we kind of come full circle to this cultural idea, is that this moral epiphany can take a lot of different forms. A lot of people will have a religious experience. This is where we see born again Christians, or people who dive into a religion because they've had this transcendent experience, this near-death experience. Because really what a failed suicide attempt is it's a near-death experience.
100%, yeah.
And for some people this really changes things. For some people it doesn't do the trick. It's very dependent on the person. As far as vague statistics go, people are more likely to relapse into a certain mental health issue if they've had it before. I mean, that's pretty common with a lot of things. That's what we see with addiction. It's what we see with depression. It's what we see with anxiety, and that's because mental health issues can often rewire your brain. Your brain, and we were talking about this earlier, right?
Yes.
Neuroplasticity.
It's our friend, but not with those with mental issues. But it still can be, though. It's a phenomenon that we can control. I truly believe that you using your prefrontal cortex and your human parts, the human parts of your brain, you can control the lower parts of your brain. You can control the emotions you feel. And when you control the emotions you feel, you're rewiring your brain to feel those emotions more easily. Right? That's how it works.
I don't feel like the majority of people can control how they feel.
They can control how they react. And that is where they control it. They control how they react to these instinctual rises in certain feelings.
But aren't those instinctual rises based in the limbic system?
You can't prevent them.
So how would the prefrontal cortex control those instinctual?
So I wasn't prepared to kind of deep dive into cognitive stuff right now, but I know it's these signals arise from your limbic system, and your prefrontal cortex is judging your future self and the future implications of how you react to this feeling. So it's a little bit slower than the limbic system instinct, right? It arises in a spark, whether you want it to or not. But the prefrontal cortex puts it in context of your culture, of your values, of your social situation, all these complex factors. That's why it takes a little while, you know? And the more you train that system, the quicker you can make those contextual judgments accurately. And by using your emotion, but only taking it as a factor in your decision, not the fuel for an automatic reflex. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I feel like that's useful in the discussion of mental health. I feel like that's a very useful tangent to kind of support any arguments that we have in the future about it, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because this ability to empower yourself is I think that's like the best antidote to things like depression where you feel powerless. I think that power and belief in yourself, that you can control that stuff, that is like a huge stepping stone to being able to say, I'm going to own this, you know, and I'm going to do this as like a step of growth. And people aren't empowered to do that, right? Given kind of to tie it back into the societal and cultural context, people aren't told like, you can be this. We're not told that a lot. Or are we? Like, I guess that's a question. Are we empowered when we have mental illness? Or are we told, oh, you need help? We're not told, do this to help yourself, right?
Well, the unfortunate part of that is that there's a distinction that needs to be made between strength and knowledge. We all have the strength to overcome obstacles that may be in our path. However, having the knowledge or having the proper resources or even having the ability in the present moment, those are things that might be compromised, and that's when we say, like, you should, you know, someone should you should talk to a doctor or you should talk to a religious leader or talk to someone who is well versed in the sense of the self
And self-love.
Yeah, I mean, when we suggest things like that, we're saying, hey, this person has the knowledge and the resources, and we want to put you in that situation.
Empower you.
We want to empower you, yeah. So there's a distinction that needs to be made between strength and knowledge. And when we say you have the power to do this for yourself, you're right, but not many people know how to do it for themselves.
And that's the best, like, for me, most problems are solved through education, and this is just another example of that. I think doctors, or especially therapists for mental health issues, would be more effective if they were like someone who sets a framework for your improvement, says, here are some tools, here's some mental tools that you can do. And they might be like kind of the shit that people always tell you, like meditation, right? But if they do the research and come up with self-help tools, because there are, people have used them, people have beat and overcome amazing obstacles using their own mental fortitude. Use these techniques to build it, and that's the education part, basically. Yeah. That's like, here's how you get there, with your strength. And that's just a good curriculum. That's about designing a curriculum that incentivizes people based on intrinsic motivation. Mm-hmm. One thing I've been reading about and just seeing in headlines and thinking about is social media and mental health, and the effects that having this downward social comparison machine enabler algorithm nightmare system affects our ability to be socially functioning beings.
So this is one area that I've had a lot of introspection on. So viewing into myself. So any expertise that I have on the social media effect on mental health,
it's based on your experience.
Is strictly based on my experience. So for people who are listening, I want you to keep in mind that when I make these claims, they are based on personal experience, and they are not necessarily general sweeping claims. The social media and mental health, I always think of Black Mirror. You remember the episode where it's the
Tinder, Instagram, fucking mutant app? Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh.
It's like the woman is trying to get her rating up to attend a wedding of her friend. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it.
Not if you want to feel good.
Yeah, if you're happy and you just need a thing to bring you down, that's the thing to do.
You want some dark reflections on our society.
Do you actually know where the term Black Mirror comes from?
No.
It's a turned off TV screen.
Oh. That makes sense. That's great.
Wow. And that's kind of what our society is. That's definitely what the perception is that we've been kind of sliding into. There's a theory in constitutional law called the slippery slope theory. Scalia is notorious for using the slippery slope argument. It's kind of bold in my opinion, but whatever.
Is it a fallacy?
Yeah, it's a complete fallacy because it's pure speculation. Pure speculation.
Oh, so if this happens, this could happen, and this could happen, and this could happen, then the Soviets own DC. That kind of shit?
Yeah, that kind of shit. So, I mean, that idea of society is kind of a slippery slope fallacy there. But it's pertinent in that we are constantly striving for social media affection. Mm-hmm. So, in mental health, I feel like while we are always striving for this, like, literally quantifiable affection from other people or appreciation for our lives.
Social validation.
Exactly.
We crave that instinctually.
We crave it, yes.
It's that limbic brain fucking around with our captain.
With our captain. It's forcing us to kind of forget and forego self-love.
And the things that bring us real fulfillment.
And self-validation, yeah.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, I know people who, like, can't spend time alone. They're not comfortable within themselves, so they need to be with other people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that isn't really talked about, it's like normal.
A lot of it's chalked up to the introvert-extrovert argument. You know, oh, I'm an extrovert. I always need to spend time with other people. And that, I feel like that's another logical fallacy right there, because just saying that one is an extrovert doesn't condemn them to the extreme.
Yeah.
You know, if
Absolutely.
one spends, 80-90% of their time with other people, you're very much an extrovert. You're very much more extroverted than most. However, that still allows people, time to kind of think and ground themselves. That 10-20% where you're just
Of like active time?
well, time spent with yourself,
Okay.
with oneself.
No, I mean like active time is it not sleeping and shit.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just making sure.
I mean, even if it's just doing homework with breaks in between, you're getting a chance to just kind of think and be in your own head.
Breaks while doing work is like every 30 minutes, just take 5 minutes and like do some fucking push-ups, stretch, and like take shit, whatever, like let those thoughts kind of seep into your subconscious, and the subconscious does amazing things for creativity. When you let it go to work, when you know how to prime it and let it go to work, it's you just have ideas popping out your hey there, speed racer. You just have ideas popping out of the back of your minds, when you go back to work. It's crazy. Another tangent, but that's cool. So, social media, and then we kind of spiraled a little bit from there.
Social media, it overtakes the importance of individual fulfillment, and I think that's the biggest detriment that it makes for mental health.
Yeah. That pretty much encapsulates the whole thing. So what about our school system either prevents, permeates, doesn't do anything about mental health? Like what do you think the effect of our school system as it's currently structured is on kind of aggregate mental health, coping and management?
Okay. One thing that capitalism has permeated our social structure, and that is perpetuated in our school system by instilling a competitive aspect in education. We forego the most important part, which is learning the stuff. Actually learning the stuff.
Yeah.
Not just
encoding it into your brain.
Yeah. And shaping your mental processes. Like,
Yeah.
it's not enough to just regurgitate test answers. That's what's so wrong about the Common Core, is that teachers just teach to tests. And
not frameworks on how to think.
Precisely. So, in that, the teach to test thing is one thing, but mental health, if we're instilling a competitive aspect in our education system, why would one person be motivated to help their peer?
Yeah.
Why would one person be motivated to really engage with the material?
Yeah.
When they could just go right ahead and do the work to get an A.
I think the competition aspect is really interesting. But I also think that it could be taken advantage of.
By whom?
By everyone involved, by the people learning the material. Because when you compete, you're trying to expand yourself beyond your previous limits. So if we compete in terms of, we just need different measurements, so people are striving for the right goals. And like, by that I mean how you treat each other. So like a competition where how you treat the people in your class, like you're going to be put into groups, and you're going to be not socially validated, but socially measured.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that emotional intelligence would then be permeated through competition. And I think that's what a lot of people lack. That's the focus on quantitative data, reductionist scientists, I think coincides with that lack of social awareness, because that's the depth that the math is lacking.
Well, I feel like that we can kind of see anecdotes of this in our political culture. I won't get into my political bias here, but I'll get into my bias against certain politicians like Ted Cruz, the Zodiac killer. I mean, the dude is like, he attempts to be human. And I think that's my favorite part about him, is just watching him fail at being a human being.
Yeah.
Absolute perpetuation of the ideal of our education system. Okay, this guy was an absolute debating champ. He was a master debater. So the kid was the perpetuation of the Western education dream. This guy like won debate tournaments all the time. He was an absolute shark when it came to reading. Like most kids, when they're like 12 or whatever, they're like, Spider-Man, yes. And he was like, Adam Smith, yes.
Just uncomfortably nerdy.
He was uncomfortably nerdy, yeah. And like Adam Smith, I can appreciate his philosophy. But Ted Cruz, he was reading some out there opinions. And he would debate these opinions really well. And it was gross to a lot of people. And the way that he talked, he wanted to take over the world at age 15? There's a soundbite of that online that you can find somewhere. We might try to find it and post it in the show notes.
What?
Yeah. It's
Ted Cruz said he was going to take over the world when he was 15?
That's what he wanted to do, yeah. I mean, the way he said it, like, he could have been joking, but he wasn't. So anyways, mental health, education, Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz.
What I'm saying is that the guy is an absolute shark when it comes to the Western education dream. However,
he's a social dunce.
He doesn't know how to be a fucking human being. He doesn't know how to person.
Like, does he have a wife?
Yes.
And what is their manifestation of love? Like, does he love people?
Dude, look on Twitter. He's like, I took my kids to the butter factory today.
What? This got so weird so quickly. I think a great presidential ticket, just for the history books, would be Ted Cruz and Chris Christie. I think that would be one of the all-time debate teams to just watch for entertainment.
Oh my god.
All right, so with mental health and education,
do you want to restate the thesis of that tangent real quick?
Yes. Okay. So yeah, the education system as currently constructed does not promote becoming adept at social situations, and that causes more mental health issues.
And this is specifically the U.S. education system that we're talking about right now, right? With that, like, even with the intense, like, scrutiny that the U.S. education system places on empirical study, such as, math, science,
STEM.
Yeah, quantitative stuff. Even with all that and the social awareness that we completely forego in our education system, we are... by the Program for International Student Assessment, we are rated number 40 globally in math and number 24 in science and reading.
Spend the most per student.
Yeah, like even considering that, there's really no excuse that we don't focus more on social awareness, because if we're lacking in these things, how are we making up for that, right?
Definitely, we're definitely not. And people look at liberal arts educations like they're useless and devalued, which they are devalued. And I think that's one of the issues, is those are highly focused on social awareness and a creative style that comes from being socially adept. It's just a focus on where those dollars are being spent. And we're, again, as we go back, we're teaching people facts, but we're not teaching them the whole picture. We're not teaching them frameworks. We're not teaching them ethical frameworks, which I think is really important if you want to develop in the right way as a nation.
Moreover, we're teaching them facts in only the way that we conceive facts to be in Western society.
Yeah, in one context.
I'd like to talk about kind of how different cultures treat mental illness.
Yeah.
Cultures deal with mental illness in different ways, and that's important for the different mental frameworks that different cultures cause us to have.
And rely upon for their perpetuation.
Exactly. One of a book that really kind of shows how different these reactions and how these cultural interpretations can be of mental health is called Crazy Like Us by Ethan Waters. It's a great book. Comes in stories that are 30 to 40 pages long, so it's a good one to leave on your nightstand and pick it up every weekend or so and read through a small story about mental health in other countries. So one story was in a place called Zanzibar, and it was dealing with schizophrenia. And I think the chapter is actually called Schizophrenia in Zanzibar. Creatively named chapter. Thank you, Ethan Waters. So anyways, we have a very strict idea of what schizophrenia is. Like, you might hear voices in your head, you might have audio-visual hallucinations, whatever it may be. You have a sense that society is coming out to get you, or that a specific party is coming out to get you, whatever you may have it. And we say, all right, go to counseling and get drugs. And that's what we do. That's the American way of dealing with it.
Yeah.
And with that, it's more of like putting Febreze on something, Febreze over something. It's masking the smell. It's not fixing it.
Yeah. Oh. Here, this will make you feel good.
Yeah, like it'll quiet those voices. It might, dampen the audio visual hallucinations. Whatever it may be. It might resolve some of the psychosis.
Like shut down parts of your brain.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you become less of yourself.
So in Zanzibar, they look at it completely differently. Schizophrenia isn't... they don't call it a mental illness. In Zanzibar, it's more of a quote-unquote demon possession. They call it a demon possession. So what they do to kind of help this is they say, hey, like, you're going through this, the community around you, we've got you. Like,
That social support is...
Social support.
So huge.
The person's job, they'll take over what that person did in the village.
Wow.
So that person can rest at home and do what they need to do.
Yeah.
And with this, the recovery rate of schizophrenia is a lot higher in Zanzibar.
Wow.
I haven't read the book since high school, so I don't remember the exact statistic on recovery in schizophrenia, but it was better than what we have here.
That's interesting. Yeah, the connection to spirituality and social support systems, I think that's a powerful connection to make. I think, because you and Milan were talking about, like, what makes a person crazy, So in our minds, you may be crazy. In your mind, you may have reached transcendence of the material world. So you're not here anymore, right? You're somewhere else. We look at that as crazy. So an example of that, also in Africa, I'm not sure exactly, I think it's around South Africa. It might also be in Lagos. I'm not quite sure. Dark Tourist, it's a Netflix series. He went through Africa and he stopped off at this island, and they worshipped a certain voodoo god that, when like channeling his spirit or his energy, they would go into like fits of violence, and they would like beat each other, and they would like do this as a spiritual celebration, like they were possessed by this powerful like protector kind of warrior voodoo god. And some people, like, it was like a trance almost. It was like a schizophrenic trance, you could say. But they look at it as connection to their god.
Well, I mean, we even have a brother in this house who has family members with schizophrenia. And so he deals with it on a regular basis. And, he'll tell me about it, and he'll say, my relationship with my father is completely normal. He might have schizophrenia, but we understand that as a family, and we try to help him with that and understand if he has something going on.
There's a common thread here between these kind of anecdotal stories, and that's social acceptance of being different in a different mental state, with your brain maybe wired a different way because of certain factors in your childhood, in your brain's development. I mean, there's so many things at play here. Maybe it's just social acceptance and saying you're not abnormal, like psychology has been trained to diagnose as.
I feel like we need to change our discourse to avoid the word normal.
What does that look like?
What does it not look like? What is normal?
Yeah, I don't know. The middle of the bell curve in terms of intelligence, mental state. It's just the middle of the bell curve, I guess.
What's the bell curve though? You can't measure personality on an XY axis.
You could measure results to certain personality tests and tests for mental disorders. And I mean, a lot of it's qualitative observation of social awareness. So like, what are you doing in a social situation? How are you responding to people's cues? How are you responding to their changes? You know, I mean, that's when you know someone's on a spectrum where that ability doesn't come easy for them.
Yeah.
So it takes all, it's a huge complex mix of things that we can't begin to tease out. And I think that's the point you were making, is we don't know what normal is. Like, really, we don't know.
One idea that I've heard, and this is from a handicapped philosopher and biochemist, actually, pretty strong combo.
Smart guy, yeah.
But he refers to people as typical and atypical, and it's a stronger discourse, because even for something to be typical, it doesn't necessarily mean the majority.
And it doesn't imply better.
Yeah.
It doesn't imply abnormal is like... Well, abnormal doesn't imply better either. I feel like it's used in a negative connotation, but like intrinsically it's not a negative word.
Intrinsically, yeah, but almost every word that we have has to be understood in a social context, right?
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, like the word, the R word, retard. That's hugely offensive because of the connotation that it's used in.
Yeah.
But and we don't use that in medical literature anymore because of the social context that the word is used in.
Sometimes the social context is very incorrect.
Sometimes the social context also dictates the intrinsic definition.
Yes, that too. It's a difficult beast,
Yeah.
Social context.
Very difficult, because it also changes wherever you go.
Yeah, severely, as we kind of did as our bouncing around the world and treatment of mental health. I mean, that we need to stop being so damn arrogant. In the West, we have all this big data and these research studies. It's like, let's look at things that work. Think about Zanzibar. Like, let's think about how their society manages things like disabilities,
Yeah.
How do they form social support networks? I think we have a lot to learn from Eastern countries from this. And by Eastern, I just mean it's Africa, East Asia, not European centric,
Yeah. I mean, we could have a whole other episode on Western arrogance.
Oh God, yeah. American exceptionalism. It's like The Incredibles.
Dude, The Incredibles could be seen as a larger allegory for world politics.
How so?
The Incredibles family being the UN, and then Syndrome being like Saudi Arabia or something, just being like, I want to make everything like you've made us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I think The Incredibles, the second one, had the social commentary was like very in your face if you paid attention to it. Have you watched? Oh, so the villain has a rant. There's a rant where he takes over the screens and he's yelling at everyone, and he's basically yelling about our lazy convenience, instant gratification, capitalistic culture that we're building. And he's yelling and screaming about this. And he's saying, like, you're lazy, you're depending on machines to do your work for you. Shit like that. And it's like, holy fuck. Like, The Incredibles goes like 5 levels deeper than I thought it was about to go. Like, he's really like, this is a wake-up call for anyone listening. You know, like, we are, you know, we're sucking at the teat of, like, Amazon and Walmart and cheap-ass food only to have it corrupt us later.
Dude, don't get me started on Walmart.
Oh, man.
With that, should we wrap it up?
Yeah. Cool. That was a winding path we took, but it was fun. It was fun at every turn, you know? Sometimes I was yelling about Ted Cruz and, like, a butter tweet. So we went from that to contemplating the relationship between gun violence and mental health and some more serious issues that I hope some people found insightful and useful to have the information when talking about these issues, and hopefully it prompts people to talk about these issues, because that's how, you know, if you want to take one thing away from this is let's talk about it. Like Colton and I are talking about it right now. Let's all do some research, take 30 minutes out of our week and talk about this issue, because I bet if you have a group of 10 friends, at least 2 of them are going to have some form of mental illness or some kind of monkey on their back, or something that they're going to want to talk to other people about and be socially accepted with, because people are afraid to talk about this because they think they won't be socially accepted. So let's talk about it, make sure it's socially accepted, let's take a step in the right direction kind of on an individual basis, and that will filter into policy. It'll filter into the design of our education system. If we all take this kind of moment in our society's history, this is really a turning point. And I think mental health and supporting people through that is one of the tools we'll use to turn this the right way.
I hope so. The first step towards social change is discourse. The very first step.
Yeah. So talk about it, and I will see you next Friday.
That wraps it up for this episode of the Applied Awareness Podcast. I hope you're leaving more aware than when the episode started. For more on the episode today, you can check out our Medium publication at medium.com/appliedawareness. To reach out to me individually, you can tweet at me on Twitter at appliedpodcast, or email me at appliedawarennesspod@gmail.com. All of the previously mentioned methods of communication will be in the show notes. Next episode, I'm going to be interviewing superstar student and author Patience Dorman. She wrote a book called Food, Faith, and Facing My Fears. A lot of F's there. She's a really interesting person and very candid and honest and open about her own struggles with mental health and eating disorders. And I think everyone will have a lot to learn from what she went through and her insights into what she's learned. So that's going to be a really interesting episode. I highly recommend that you listen to it. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a rating on iTunes or Spotify. It really helps me out, and I appreciate you. Thank you.